right, and welcome to the Uncover Cyber live stream, the SOAR series. My name is Joel Bork, and I'll be your host for this evening's episode, where we're going to be diving into a unique threat intelligence and orchestration toolset that has more integrations than I've ever seen before. Now, tonight, we'll be diving into ThreatQuotient's intelligence and investigative platforms. Now, I'm really excited because with me today is a gentleman who has years of experience working in advanced technology research centers and labs. Now, he's also got years of experience serving in the United States Air Force, so thank you for your service, sir. But I'm excited to introduce Senior Vice President of ThreatQuotient, Jonathan Cooch.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here tonight.
We're excited. Next up is a gentleman who's going to be diving into the technicals of the ThreatQ platform for us on this live stream. He spent years in networking and the cyber industry working at organizations such as Cisco, Threat Track Security, and now he's got 5 years at ThreatQuotient. So I wouldn't want anyone else demoing this for us tonight. Christian Galladora, welcome. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Joel. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
You got it. Now, before we dive right in, I want to throw out a few thank yous. First of all, huge thank you to our executive producer, Neil Bridges, for making all of this happen. Thank you to our moderation team. We got Jack and Frazier in the house. And then thank you to the ThreatQuotient team for joining us and supporting the Uncover Cyber live stream. Now, also, I truly believe that we need to celebrate those in our community, in this InfoSec community, who are making an impact because it's important. So I want to throw an extra little shout out. And Jack, if you can throw her information in the stream chat for me. This is someone who also made tonight happen. And she just had an article written about her for making and activating impact. Let's give it up for Liz Bush at ThreatQuotient, everybody. All right. Now, John, thanks for sharing that article about Liz. Now, you've been working with her for quite a while. How long has it been now?
It's been about 6 to 7 years right now. It has definitely been a long trek between companies, and it's been great having her around. I think she's a great example for a lot of people in cybersecurity that, you know, she takes on new challenges, tries new things, moves into new areas, and constantly keeps herself challenged in her career. So it's been really great to work with her.
That's fantastic. I mean, we have to, that's what everybody in this is doing, right? We're getting out of our comfort zones, learning something new, getting better on a daily basis. So that's fantastic. Congratulations again, Liz, and thanks for all that you're doing. With that, you guys ready?
Go for it.
Let's do it. Let's jump right in. So Uncover Cyber is here to take cybersecurity products in which many times are misunderstood. Sometimes the reviews are pay to play, or they're just magic boxes or software deployments. And we're going to uncover the inner workings of these platforms for you and let you guys ask the questions. So without further ado, let's dig into ThreatQuotient. John, what makes ThreatQuotient so special?
Well, so if it's okay, I'd like to walk through a few slides here that'll just kind of explain it, hopefully fairly easily.
Yeah, please do. So throw it up on the screen. Now, for our audience members, we have asked that they keep it to just a couple slides because we really want to get into the technicals of their platform. But sometimes you have to have the slideware in order to really get a good visual. So if you guys have seen my previous slides, I am definitely a picture person. So John, jump right in.
and we'll keep this simple. And I only got 2 slides we're going to throw up here. So, you know, in general, ThreatQuotient is there to help you organize and use threat intelligence data that you get. I think as most people that have been involved with threat intelligence know, you know, threat intelligence is basically where you're getting a lot of information on the bad guys that are out there and what they're doing and how they're conducting attacks and that kind of information. And you can get that from commercial companies, from open source, from sharing communities. You know, most of the major industries all have sharing communities where they're sending information and data back and forth. And you can get it from the government. You know, they'll be sending out information, but you can also get it from internal systems. So as your own security teams are looking into threats or events or incidents on your network, you can gather all of that information together. And so our platform is really designed to aggregate a lot of that information. But by and large, I mean, I can tell you, you know, hey, here's 100,000 IP addresses. They're all bad. that doesn't mean anything to you. You got to have some level of context. Why are they all bad? People could go around and say, well, knives are bad if you don't use them properly. So, you got to kind of add some context around it. And then you got to prioritize it. And I've been doing threat intelligence now for commercial organizations for, upwards of 15 some years. And one of the first questions that companies always ask is just, listen, I just want to know what's relevant to me. How do I identify what I should care about? Because I'm really getting like 20 newspapers every day filled with threat intelligence data. So I've got to sift through all of that to only find the articles and the things that are important to me. And so one of the things you can do with our platform is we have this customer controlled scoring that allows customers to say, here's what's important to me. Here's what I care about in my environment. Here's the kinds of technologies that I operate, the kind of business that I work in. And so our platform, they can customize it to be able to say, all right, let's assign scores to this data coming in so that we can help you identify really what it is that you want to look at and what it is you need to use in your environment. And then really it's the use of that data. So once we have it all organized and we have it prioritized, it's being able to send it out to those teams that need to be able to use it. How do I identify what the actual high priority threats are? What are those unknowns? I get kind of data and I'm not really sure whether this applies to me or not. Is this a targeted kind of thing, or is this just somebody spamming all of my users? And then what's noise? What is commodity kind of stuff out there that my standard blocking and tackling security tools should be able to handle, and I don't need to spend a lot of time working on those. And so, once you make that differentiation between the data, you need to be able to take action on it. You either have to respond to something that's going on, you have to investigate something, investigate the unknowns to determine, are they actual threats or are they noise? Or you just need to ignore them, remove them from your environment, block them at the perimeter, and just not worry about it anymore.
So let me ask you a question, John. So you talked about the scoring prioritization on this. So you're telling me you probably already prioritize it pretty well. But then you're saying, and how do you prioritize that? Like, is it 0 to 100, or what is your scoring mechanism on that?
Yeah, Christian will walk through this on the platform. I think we do very simple math, 0 to 10. I can't count any higher than how many fingers I have, or else I got to take off my shoes, and that becomes complicated. So we try to keep it as basic as possible. It's just a 0 to 10, and it's to help filter out kind of what those really high priority, relevant kind of threats are that you need to be dealing with.
Very cool. And then you said adjusting. So are you talking about bumping up 1 or 2, or bumping it from 1 to 10? Like, is Christian going to show you a bit?
Yeah, he can definitely walk you through it. And it really depends on what kind of threats you're dealing with. So in addition to moving up the scale, you can also move down the scale. One of the things that our platform can do is, if I'm getting information, say from a case management system that an incident response team is using, and they mark something as a false positive in their case management system, we'll get that information back. And then you can actually drop the score down. So I can drop it from a 10 down to a 0 if it's a known false positive. Okay. So you want to be able to move the data however you need to in order to be able to best use it and leverage it.
Perfect. Yeah, and what I would say is in a real world example, and it's why customer controlled scoring is so important, is if I'm a financial institution based out of New York, for example, and I've got access to Swift, so we're moving money around. A geopolitically motivated cyber attack from one country in the Middle East to Saudi Arabia, targeting oil infrastructure, that might be a high severity thing, and the threat intel feeds might correctly identify it as such. But is it relevant to me? Not necessarily. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I want to be in control of that, and that's how we built our scoring.
That's a great ad, because we see that where it's, hey, this is, it's a banking Trojan. Well, does that impact an oil and gas company? Maybe not, right? And it might impact their employees, but it's not high risk to the business, right? So great ad, Christian. Sorry, back over to you, John.
Yeah, no problem. And so it's a lot of it is bringing it into our threat library, into your knowledge base that you're building up on these threats and how they operate. I often talk with friends in the industry, and I state that CISOs or security managers, SOC managers are faced either at least once a week, sometimes of them once a day, where you can't stop your executives from going onto the internet and reading articles. And so they're going to come back at you and they're going to say, hey, I just read about this, new thing of ransomware, this new vulnerability, Microsoft vulnerability, or whatever it happens to be. What do we know about it? Does it affect us? And what are we doing about it? And so one of the things that our platform is designed to do is to really help those executives answer those kinds of questions. You got to get out ahead of the problem. You got to be aware of what's going on, but then you need to be able to relate it to your environment almost immediately. So it's not just good enough to say, yeah, I read that article on the ransomware. Man, I hope we don't get hit by that. You should have really good knowledge on if that ransomware targets us and our organization, then we'll be able to do something about it. I'm prepared for that kind of attack to either block it or to be able to respond to it as fast as possible so it doesn't affect you. And so really a lot of the core of our platform is around, this slide where we just talk about data management and the analyst workbench. You're working with that threat library. And it's not just indicators. It's not just saying, here's the 100,000 IP addresses or hash values or domains that we want to block. It's understanding that context. What kind of industries are being targeted by these attacks? Who's behind these attacks? And it's not because you're going to go after, that particular group, but I have worked with clients. There was actually one client I worked with years ago to where they were targeted by a very specific adversary. And we went on to their network to help them out with it. And we said, you know what, this adversary has been running attacks for like a few years now. Let's go look for signs of their previous attacks. And we had come to find that it was basically like an auto update that they were doing. They started back in 2007, they updated in 2009, and then again in 2011. And we just kept things of all these attacks where they would just update the malware that they had on the system. And so it's good from a TTP's perspective, from a behavioral and modus operandi kind of perspective, to be able to track these adversaries, because if you do see them on your network, there's a good chance maybe they've been there before, that you've been targeted before. And so with this kind of knowledge base, you can now pull information out of there around not only is this what I know right now, but historically, here's what I know about these guys that have been attacking me. So I know what to look for on my network. Very
cool. Now, we do have a bunch of questions from the audience real quick. So if you guys are okay with it, let's take a couple here real fast. BSEC676, he said, is this an on-prem appliance? I think we can hold off on that. You're going to talk about that here in a bit, right, John?
Yeah, or Christian can handle it. Yep.
Cool. We'll come back to that one. The next one's from Sean. He says, do you take into consideration an attack vector that might be more relevant for one industry rather than another, say BEC or wire fraud?
Yeah, most definitely. So we can, we tie in all of our data. We pull in the MITRE ATT&CK model. So you have all the different attack patterns that are out there. And the key to any of these systems really is to make sure that you prioritize and that you're paying attention to the things that matter to you and how you operate. So one example I always throw out is with spear phishing. That's a very popular attack vector coming in. If you have an email, something watching your email protection, that attack vector may not be as important to you. Whereas if you don't have it, that attack vector is going to be very important to you, because there's always going to be stupid users out there. And so people are going to click on links and you're going to be in trouble. So that once again gets down to the prioritization and what data you're focusing on in the system.
I think that needs to be a new quote on the stream. There's always going to be stupid people out there. So that should be one we can pull up here in the future.
I actually have a t-shirt that says there is no patch for human stupidity.
Exactly. I need that shirt. Oh, that's a good one. Cool. Well, next question is, and this one's from Frazier. He says, with being able to adjust the data coming in, how user-friendly is that to the actual user, or is it more just access level adjustment? And Christian, I'll kick that to you, because are you going to show that? You'll touch on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go through the walkthrough and I'll show you exactly how the scoring policy is configured. It's very simple. As a matter of fact, if you could bring it up, I'll show you exactly what it looks like here. We'll just jump on it.
Yeah,
this is that kind of
that kind of audience. So heads up, guys, and real quick, we do have a swag box giveaway here at the end of this. So guys, pay attention, because it is going to be, you guys know me, if you've seen my streams before, we will be asking a question, and the first one to get the question right will be getting a swag box mailed to you. So we'll grab your physical address. We'll get it over to the moderators at the end if you're the winner, and we'll be shipping that out to you. So be paying attention, guys, and thank you guys for supplying that swag box.
I'm excluded, right? I can't compete for that.
I think so.
So this is
Not
what
if
our
I
scoring
answer
policy-
first.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll see. This is what our scoring policy looks like. And somebody asked, how simple is it, right? I think you could already kind of tell what's going on here. But every indicator in the threat library, as it's added, as it's modified, or if you make adjustments here, is going to be evaluated against the scoring policy. And so it's going to be evaluated against every one of these characteristics that I'm going to show you on the next 4 tabs. And so there's a couple different approaches, but they could be cumulative in effect. What you're looking at here is scoring based on indicator type. And the real nerds will call this the pyramid approach. The pyramid of pain approach.
Okay.
So that'll be familiar to them. But the idea is very simple. If I want to increase the score of my IP addresses or an IP because it's an IP, I move the slider over here. If I want to decrease because maybe my infrastructure doesn't really have anything to do with that particular indicator type, I move it over there. Very simple.
Very cool. So you're saying if I have like a sandboxing capability for DNS, I could spin down DNS a bit. So like certain DNS queries that may flag high, I could reduce the score on that?
Yes.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll see more of that when we talk about the attributes here.
Cool.
We also can score on indicator source or combination of sources. These are going to be feeds. These are going to be integrations, your analysts. These are going to be your infrastructure. We haven't even talked about bidirectional integrations yet, and other tools. We do deduplicate indicators. So these can have a stacking sort of cumulative effect. And then one of the things that's very powerful, and the reason why I wanted to jump straight into scoring here, even though I kind of didn't plan it, is because we're getting such great questions that kind of lead to it, right? So somebody asked about specific like categories of data. Well, one of the things that's very powerful about our object model, and you're seeing it here with an IP address, is that these attributes, these are data points under these specific indicators or whatever item you're talking about. But you can add whatever attribute you want here. You are not locked into an object set. Yes, we do a lot of the work on parsing for feeds. And so that data is going to be stored here and normalized. But you could refer to that. You'll notice the category here, fraud, malware, right? The confidence. That sort of stuff could be referred to within that scoring policy as well. And so that's...
So you're saying now, can I manually create a tag and relate it to certain things and reduce it? So if something comes in, that would be interesting because I'm not sure how things would come in and apply your custom tag, but interesting thought around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I could even talk about that for hours. So our feed parsing engine, we actually define the mappings as YAML files, YAML configs. And so it's really more of just a configuration file that gets uploaded. So when folks come to me and they say, yeah, I'm not really sure I like the taxonomy that you added this in, can I change it? We could just provide that YAML and they make whatever change they want in that config file. It's literally, this is what the threat intel provider has in their JSON response. Sorry if I'm going a little too technical here. I have that.
Keep it coming. I love it.
Yeah. And this is what ThreatQ calls it in the attribute. They would just change that to whatever they want.
Fantastic.
And from a process perspective, I mean, what you were talking about, Joel, as far as a user can go in, they can manually add in their own, custom attributes with custom values. A lot of our clients will leverage that because they use it to determine what data goes where and how they handle the data in their environment. So if I set up my own custom attribute of Cooch criticality, then I can create that value and I can set it to low, medium, high, or critical. And so, yep, Christian's going to set it up for me here. So, and then what I can do is I can bulk apply that to a set of indicators or objects in our system for whatever I feel is appropriate. And then we can then filter on that and use that for our integration so that only data that is marked as Cooch criticality of critical actually goes off to the SIM or our threat hunting team or whatever other kind of integrations you may have with other security tools.
Cool. So let me take a step back, because for the audience, guys, this is my first time seeing it too. So, digging into this and really understanding it, I feel like I need to take a step back and provide an example. So let's say I have, the government comes out with these CISP reports occasionally, right, with threat intelligence on them. And you can ingest those, I'm sure. So let's say I have that feed and I've got the YAML set up, right? I can go in there and I can change that tag on that to be Cooch criticality, right? And I can prioritize that higher, right? So I can
trademark.
So anything coming in from that specific feed, it will automatically get that tag, and I can prioritize that higher than all the other feeds, whether it's from Alien Vault or what have you, coming into your tool. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
absolutely.
I like
not that I respect Cooch criticality as like a metric in any meaningful sense, but yes, if you wanted to do that, you could.
All your friends are using it. You'd be cool.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
Let's step back real quick before we get too much further. Is this an on-prem appliance? Can it go cloud, hybrid? What are you guys looking at?
So we came out of the on-prem space, which was very important for many of our customers 5-10 years ago. Right now, the reality is today, a lot of folks are moving to a cloud environment. They've been doing that for 10 years, right? But more secure environments. The short answer is, if your environment could run a CentOS box, virtual appliance, whatever, we could install ThreatQ on it. CentOS minimal 7.8, I think, something like that.
So I have ESXi server that can run CentOS. You can throw it on there, and I can run my SOAR platform in my ESX server.
Yep. ESX, AWS, Azure.
Very cool. And that kind of leads me to my next question. So we actually had Dev Null Zen say, so Active Countermeasure is, I guess this is another company. They did a threat hunting webinar yesterday, partly showing off some of their free tools, maybe community editions, I'm assuming. Does ThreatQuotient have any community editions, or does ThreatQuotient plan to hold any threat hunting webinars of their own? I guess that's over to you, John.
Yeah. So we do not currently have any community editions for our platform. However, we have held in the past actually some threat hunting webinars, and I'm sure we will have some in the future. If you follow us on social media, we post all those whenever we're going to host them. Or if you just want to reach out to the company, reach out to media or sales at ThreatQ.com, and we can definitely get in contact with you to point you to those webinars that we've already held. The threat hunting one is one I get really excited about, because you think about it, we have this threat intelligence coming into the system, and there's a methodology out there called Tahiti that came out of Dutch payment systems over in Europe, to where it's threat hunting based on threat intelligence. Mm-hmm. And you figure we have all this threat intelligence coming in that says we have an adversary that operates this way, uses these tools, here are the indicators associated with it, and gives you really that roadmap for going out and looking in your environment for all that stuff. And then on the other side of our platform, we have all the integration to be able to query, the SIM. Have you seen this before? Any log repositories, web proxies, EDR, endpoint systems that you have in there, firewalls, anything in your environment, you can then query with our system to be able to say, hey, have you seen this? And get that information back. So I think our system can be a very powerful threat hunting tool. We've got a little bit of ways to go, I think, before it becomes, a standard kind of use for it. But we definitely feed a lot of threat hunting teams, and they use our system in our dashboards, which Christian will walk you through, for being able to handle threat hunting missions and those kinds of things.
No, yeah, that's awesome. So real quick, Jack, if you will throw the ThreatQuotient social media splash up there. Guys, I've included Christian and Cooch's social media LinkedIn profiles on there. So guys, click on those links real quick. I don't normally say click on links, I promise. I'm going to do it now, though.
There was an email from Jonathan Cooch.
Yes, yes. Click on the thing I just posted on LinkedIn, please. Do me a favor, all of you, every last one.
Oh, goodness. Add them on LinkedIn. All right, enough's enough. Thank you, and keep your eyes out for those next threat hunting sessions. That's fantastic. So, Christian, I apologize for interrupting. Back over to you. Talk to me more about these integrations, because what I heard correctly, is true, you're telling me I can take whatever firewall I have, whether it's Palo, doesn't matter. Endpoint, if somebody was asking about Sentinel-1 in the last session, or Sophos, or CrowdStrike, or it doesn't matter, but you're saying you can take in those logs, query your SOAR, and it's going to check all of those vendors' devices?
Yeah, so architecturally, what we do is we have over 200 integrations today, about 100 open source feeds, 50 commercial feeds, and we integrate with about 50 other tools, more than that now, several different SIMs, different sort of EDR type solutions, things like that. What we strive to do is take all of the data that's being reported to you, the threat data, externally from your threat intel sources, and sort of provide that prioritized, relevant data to your technology, like your SIM, for example. That's the most powerful use case that we typically have when we integrate internally. And any sort of matches that on the SIM, ThreatQ gave us this IP address, and then we saw it in this firewall log or whatever. We're going to bring that back through the APIs that we have with our respective products. Now, that's going to look architecturally a little bit different depending on which technology we're integrating with, right? Some of them we could just reach right in and query and grab it back. Others we have to write NAP on their side.
I did notice I said anything, and you hesitated there for a second. So that's fair. But
right.
It makes sense, right? Because you sit on top of the SIM, right? So most people should already be sending their logs, whether it's for cloud environments, whether it's for your HTTP, whatever log, and you guys integrate with the core SIMs. So you're pulling that in along with the main EDRs, the main firewalls that you're seeing that you're partnered with. And that's where you're able to create those hooks and API hooks and really go out and query the data that's being seen across your enterprise. So.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And we're going to show you the correlation between, if you've got a sighting on a SIM, let's say Splunk. I don't pick favorites, but let's be real. They're big in that space. We're going to show you, hey, this indicator was observed by on Splunk, and at this time, it's going to be an attribute on that indicator. And you're also going to see all of the intelligence, all of the threat data that you have on that specific indicator. And you could do a lot with that. And I'm going to show you within the context of an investigation where you could go with that. It's a very powerful capability to do that correlation automatically.
Perfect. One of the things I'm sorry, just real quick, Joel. I guess one of the things I would bring up is, as you look at your system, there's really, two ways that we look at integrations. I mean, you can use a repository like ours to push out information to other security tools, to where you're alerting people and making them aware or pushing out information for protection and defense. But then it's also a research repository that, as people are using other tools, I'm not going to get a SOC analyst to stop using their SIM. I'm not going to get an incident responder to stop using case management. They're using the tools that they use. But I want to be there through our integrations to be able to provide more information so that as they're doing what they're doing, they can automatically in the background, it's querying all the time, hey, do I have more information about this? So the ThreatQ will send them that information and it'll pop up within whatever tool they happen to be using. So that's really the nature of the bidirectional integrations that we're going for, is so that we're exchanging data back and forth. We're not just pushing it out, in the blind, being like, all right, here's a bunch of information. We want to be able to get it back and make sure that it's the right information and that we're constantly improving, the database, the knowledge of information that's in there.
Well, and I love that, because what I see is a lot of tools sucking up everything, right? Because they want you to go to their UI or their GUI, and it's like, no. Bidirectional is the way of the future, like send and receive, right? You have to. Yeah. Just have to.
I think a lot of companies, when they first jump into threat intelligence, it's kind of like, I'm just going to shove all that threat intel into my SIM. And if you've ever worked as a SOC analyst, you're staring at the glass, you're staring at the screen all day long, you're going through the different alerts that are there, trying to identify false positives, which ones, who just forgot their password versus, what's an actual threat there trying to attack you. And so they're just going through that list. You throw in threat intelligence raw, unverified, unvalidated, not prioritized, bunch of positives in there. Well, guess what? Your screen's just going to light up that much more. Now you're going to have 100 things to look at versus just 50 things to look at. And so what we want to do is we want to take those 50 things on the screen and reduce that down to here's the top 1 or 2 you really need to focus on first off, because we know some information about this. This is something that might affect the company or organization that we care about. This is a ransomware attack. This is some other, kind of attack where they're trying to steal our intellectual property, versus, somebody that just forgot their password kind of thing. So the real thing is to make sure that you are prioritizing the data and you're sending only the right data out to those systems.
Yeah, spot on. And for those of you who are watching, if you haven't had to deal with a bunch of threat intelligence feeds before, I was talking to a guy over in the UK actually not too long ago. We were talking about different threat intel feeds and how, in my day job at IronNet, we have to curate, we even pay for feeds that are supposed to be high fidelity. And even then we see stuff on there. And I was talking to him about it and he goes, yep, it's, half of it is rubbish. And I promise you had a better accent than me, but it's the truth, right? So having something like that can kind of filter it down, you have to if you're going to be day in, day out working in the SOC with that data. So, Christian, I promise we're going to get over to that to dig into that case. I want to see it. Couple questions first. California 909 said, "Are you going to migrate to anything since CentOS is about to find its final resting place?"
I'm going to leave that to my core engineers and architects. I imagine we've got everything containerized and everything like that now, so it'll be there. I just don't know internally exactly when we're going to make that switch and what it will be to.
That's fair. That's fair. And then the next one, Christian, is actually for you. Yeah, I requested the individual. He said, when you say it's modulated for customers, does that mean the modulated piece is just per customer, or is it like a template that can be downloaded? If it's modulated to the customer, does that mean they need to have a build for it?
No. So I think I understand what this asker is asking, but if I don't, please give me a follow-up, clarify. It's very customizable. And so what happens is when you download ThreatQ and you install it in your environment, you're going to get something that's a little bit like a tabula rasa blank slate, call it. What you then do, you go to our marketplace, you install our integrations. You're going to have different feeds that you have access to. You're going to have different data sources. It's going to look something like this. And so if you have access to any of the cool commercial feeds, right? I'm going to give you an example here. Alien Vault OTX Pulse, just as an example of something that needs an API key. You would put in this API key and enable that feed. You could schedule it. You could do manual runs, things like that. And that's going to save that information, that threat data in your threat library. And you'll then be able to do analytics on it. What is this source giving me in terms of attributes and context? Then you do your scoring, and then you're off to the races with your threat intel and feeding data into your internal citing systems and things like that. Many integrations have a lot more configuration than this in terms of, filtering based on certain industries or confidence or whatever the API gives us availability to do. But that's the general idea.
Cool.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it spot on. An Alien Vault, just once you throw in the API key, you get everything, right? So that makes absolute sense.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's jump into it, Christian. So, okay, I've got my API keys set up. I've got, CISP, I've got a couple free feeds. I've got a couple pay feeds. I typically used to send those to my SIM, but now I've got ThreatQuotient. What is it going to do for me? How do you use it?
Sure. So all of that data is going to wind up in your threat library. And I want to be clear here. We're not just a feed aggregator or anything like that. As an analyst, you could add whatever items that you want as well. This is the object library that we support today out of the box. We do have the capability of creating custom objects on demand. We might have to work with you on what fields you want, but we could build those. We've got an indicator parser, a signature parser, spearfish parser, sticks parser. That's going to help us when you mention getting documents, right, from different organizations. Maybe they're sticks documents. Maybe hopefully they're not PDF still, but a lot of times they are.
You never know.
Exactly. That's how you're going to get that information into the threat library. One of the things that I like to tell folks is, when I say threat library, I think actually somebody in our marketing team came up with that term, and I love it. I'm way too much of an engineer to admit this. Maybe this means I've like been in the industry for too long. You start off and you're like, think of like, and this is any organization, core engineering, like, man, marketing called it that. Like, that's not how I think about it at all. Threat library is a great name for it.
They nailed it.
What's that?
I said they nailed it with the name.
They nailed it. They nailed it. And the reason for that is, a library is not a big pile of books, right? It's searchable. It's indexed. You go in there, you look at, I guess they still use the Dewey Decimal System. I haven't been in the library. But you could find exactly what you're looking for. In the same way here, I could type in financial, and it's going to show me every record in my threat library that mentions financial anywhere, right? It could be a comment. It could be one of those attribute key value pairs. Could be, in the description, anything like that. We've got keyword-based search. You could use and or logic to find what you're looking for here. You could filter on dates. Maybe I only want to see stuff that's been created within the last 30 days. You could look at relationships, right? Is this thing related to a specific malware family of mine? Is it related to a list of indicators? What's the source of this information? What tag is on it? All of this stuff. So it's a very powerful capability, much like a library is.
Now, are you able to filter like on, I'm guessing you're getting there, but so this is your library, but if it's seen within my environment, am I going to use this? I won't be using this page for that, correct? This is just the library of all of the threat intelligence and threats I'm getting, correct?
Sure, absolutely. Now, what you can do there is you could actually filter on source of the information, and I'm just going to pick something out of a hat here. If I look at Splunk here, any technology that's within my environment, any of my infrastructure, I could actually see here that I've got 3 events, which are sightings of indicators that I have provided. Now, this is a very powerful capability, what I'm about to say. We actually have these, what we call collections. So you take this query and you could save it and you could say Splunk data. And then you go out and you're going to build your custom dashboards. So what you can do is you could actually, I'm just going to create a dashboard here, call it Splunk data.
I like that, because you know what? When you talk about building dashboards, now you're bringing in the different, and tell me if this is right? I'm just hypothesizing here a bit, but I have Splunk data, I've got my endpoint data, I've got my firewall data, I might have some NDR and analytic output data, and you're telling me I can bring that into one dashboard and visualize all those different pieces?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our mission is to help people manage their threat data, turn it into threat intelligence, operationalize it, use it for investigations, and for me, that's a very important aspect of it.
I would say so. Absolutely. All right. Sorry for interrupting. Continue on. I want to see this real quick, because you're building a dashboard as we go right now, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That collection I just referred to, I'm going to look at my events. I could manage what columns I'm going to add, just like, Excel. It's just a little prettier. I could add whatever columns I want here. It's a lot prettier. I'm sorry if the product design team, UX team is listening. It's a lot prettier. I'm sorry. I was kidding.
I can make up on Excel, 100%.
Sources of information here. If I've got any related adversaries, we could do that. I could control my sorting, and then that's what you're going to see here. Build whatever widgets you want. Go wild with it. You could share it with members of the team. So, you saw me build the dashboard right here of internal events. I could now share this with members of the team, and they'll just be able to immediately pop it up. They won't have to build it themselves.
Well, I love that, because, okay, maybe you do have somebody who can throw it up on your SOC dashboard wall, but let's say you've built your own, right, that are valuable, and one day your dashboard is the red one, not the one up on the screen, right? Now you can send that over real quick, say, hey, look at what I'm seeing based on my specific criteria. So that's really cool. I like it.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is also, it's to support the process. I'm a big people, process, and technology kind of thing. Technology isn't all the answers, and but you got to be able to support the processes that are there. So I look at it from an analyst perspective. You're coming in, when you come on shift, typically it's just all right. What do I need to look at? You know, what are my high priority kind of things? And so to be able to set up a dashboard around external or internal intelligence or events that align with what you care about, what you need to be looking at. You know, if I'm doing an operational technology network, let's say I'm in the oil or gas, oil and energy kind of sector, then I'm going to be able to create dashboards around, listen, what kind of reporting, what kind of information have I gotten on threats to oil and gas or energy networks? And so I can put that all up on my dashboard. I start my shift and I can immediately start to sort through that. And then if I do come up with something, yeah, be able to share that dashboard with others, should be able to share that information with others.
I like it. Now, question from the audience real quick. I have Net Fraser asked, when you mention the databases storing information, such as the threat library, does that mean the master database for ThreatQuotient is receiving a copy of the notification, or is it customer by customer basis?
So it is a single tenant solution, if I understand their question correctly. So whether we're hosting it on your behalf, whether you downloaded an OVA or you've deployed it on AWS or whatever, we're not getting your event information. It's going to your instance. And if we are hosting it for you, it is your data. We're not in this game of, we actually don't sell intelligence. So we're not in this game of like collecting customer data and using, there's value in that, but it's just not our approach. We've always, you know, our mission is to help people manage their intelligence.
Sounds good. So quick.
I don't play. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So you have no plan to go that.
Correct.
I think the question where it's kind of going is, okay, let's say somebody sees threat intelligence and now I can say, hey, this is bad for XYZ. You're not then submitting that up into a ThreatQuotient database and sharing that out, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect.
We don't sell intelligence. We don't. Yeah.
You are that orchestration, bring it together, analyze what's in your environment and manage that. Okay, perfect. So show me how you manage it. Right now I have an incident in my environment. What is that looking like from the ThreatQuotient perspective? How do you action it and where do you go?
So there's a couple different approaches to threat intel management. I'm going to run with what you just said, which is I have an event, right? Something happened. What do we do with this? Now we could go the traditional way and we could look and like get an event view or an indicator view and say, "Ooh, what is this? What are we dealing with?" Right? And then I could get on Slack or Teams or whatever with Cooch, and then we could both have the same tabs open and we could send each other links, and that's really cool. But honestly, it's tedious, and I wish we had something a little bit more collaborative. So what I do is I start an investigation based on that sighting. And so you could see here, first of all, I've brought in that event. I've got information. What little context I have here is that there was an observed IP address in my Splunk environment, and I could bring that in here. Now, one of the things that's interesting is other members of my team can join in on this investigation. So as I make these changes, you're going to see it populate. Well, if Cooch brought it up, I don't think he has access to this environment, but he would see those changes in his screen immediately. Now, anyone who's ever used, I'm not going to mention a name brand product, but you know, a cloud-based document editor where 10 people could get on board, it could get messy very quickly. So one of the important aspects that we had to design into this was, well, how do I have my own private scratch pad that doesn't sort of clutter up the rest of the team as I'm chasing my hypotheses and maybe finding garbage, but maybe finding gold.
It's that infamous rabbit trail, right? That you could spend 2 hours digging down and you're like, oh, now I got to dig my way back out. Okay, so fair. So this is your screen, but where's your scratch pad? How do you show me how you do that? I'm curious now.
So you're looking at it right now. Okay. You are looking at it. This is actually, these two items are only on my screen. So Cooch can jump into this investigation. It'll be empty. Now, if I find something that's interesting, I could right click and hit add to investigation. You'll notice the colors change and that commits it. And now he's going to see that pop into existence on his view.
Oh, look at you using commit like this is GitHub or something. Okay. I like it.
And the same would be true. If I were in this investigation, I would now see that event listed. I wouldn't see the indicator. I wouldn't see the IP address, but I could add in any other information I wanted to. And then as I committed that, it would show up on his, you know, we call that area the evidence board. So it would show up on his evidence board as part of this investigation.
And then those are comments on the right. Is that what I'm seeing? So that's like custom comments you can add to the case?
Yeah, so these are descriptions here. Typically, a lot of times the descriptions are populated from threat intel providers, but you can add your own comments here as an analyst. You could pop into that more detailed view if you'd like, and you're able to seamlessly explore the relationships with other items here. One of the cool things that you'll see throughout the platform is this little preview button here, this little eyeball. If you click that, you're going to get just that quick dossier view of whatever item that you're looking at. So maybe you decide based on what you see here whether or not to bring that item into the investigation.
Okay, very cool. So let's say this is the extent of my investigation. And now I need to pass this up to management. Okay, it's incident worthy. Need to take it a step further. Am I missing a step in your demo? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that's where my mind takes me.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you could bring management in. You could bring the rest of the team in. You could do some tasking from here. Now, let me be very clear. We're not a case management system. If you need a case management system, don't buy us as your case management system. But we can account for units of work within the threat library. And usually what we prefer to do is integrate our platform, our threat library, a task with a unit of work, whatever your case management system calls it, integrating it sort of one for one, so that as you have cases rolling in on whatever ticket system you have, that's going to be visible in the threat library. You're going to see those related to the adversaries or campaigns that you're investigating or whatever you're doing with those tickets. And that information could actually be shown here within the investigation view. You'd actually see that on the timeline. Now, I hate to be so shameless to make this point, but it is true. If you're investigating an incident that occurred and you had done a threat hunt on that campaign or adversary or whatever, wherever you were going off of 6 months ago, and you found nothing, that's a good thing that you could report up to your management or your customer or whatever position you're in. Again, shameless, I know, but it's nice. It's a nice functionality.
That is really nice functionality. Now,
and you would also see that information. One of the other areas there is down below that we have a timeline associated with everything. So we'll let you know, when was this first reported into the system? When did you first know about it? What kind of other historical things have happened with the information you have as part of your investigation? And so if you had run a hunt mission against this 6 months ago, and let's say you created that hunt mission as an event within the system, that event would then be related to the various items that are in here, and then it would show up on your timeline. And from a reporting perspective, also with executives, so a lot of organizations like to use this view as kind of the eye candy on the wall for executives to show the teams, because you could have Christian as the threat intelligence analyst building this out. But if I have SOC analysts, if I have my incident responders, if I have my threat hunt team folks in here adding on more information, it really builds out that collaborative view of here's what we know. If anybody's ever been inside of an incident response war room, this is the kind of organization you want everybody to be able to contribute and say, here's the piece of the mosaic, the piece of the puzzle that I have, and let me add that on to the board here.
Oh yeah, when it's all hands on deck, you need everybody working together. So 100%.
Exactly.
And I could see this starting to sprawl very quickly. Am I right, Christian?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the very important things that we did early on is actually integrate with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So those techniques are going to show up here as attack patterns in the threat library. And I'll just bring in something, whatever they publish. You'll actually get the description here, and you'll get the recommended courses of action. So as you go through and you start to figure out what sort of game your adversary is playing, you'll actually be able to see what the recommended policy and procedural changes that you could make within the organization and start tasking from there. That's sort of operational strategic response to this sort of threat. Not quite tactical, but we haven't gotten there yet.
No, I like it. So do you mind if I throw over a couple of questions? Because I think you've answered them, but I want to be sure everybody's been heard. So Sean says, do you have management dashboard /reports? It sounds like this is kind of the reporting in you can basically share this with anybody in the company, and this is kind of the final result that you can pass over with your comments, MITRE ATT&CK, et cetera, all built into this view. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when somebody says reporting, it's a very common thing that is almost like, I don't want to say a joke within product teams, but it's like reporting can mean so many different things. So we've got this, we've got the custom dashboards, we've got PDF style reporting. We have all those. It's just, does it match exactly what your use case is? Typically, in most organizations, management likes that custom dashboard, and they like looking at the investigation to figure out what the heck is going on.
Yeah. But I think Christian brings up a good point. We do have that ability within any of those. He showed you the description and the comments. What a lot of teams will do is, as you build out, let's say you're running a hunt mission and you want to provide a report up about it, you create an event around that. You fill in the description. You have all the related items that are associated with that. You can relate this investigation to it, whatever it happens to be, and then you can convert that to a PDF so that the description becomes part of the report. That's the content of your report, and then it's got any other technical information associated with it if needed. And a lot of times teams will leverage that PDF report to then be able to send out to the organization at large. And as long as you don't write it too technical, it's fine for executives to keep them aware of, answering those important questions of, do you know about this? Does it affect us? And what are we doing about it?
Really cool. So let's say, okay, so I'm SOC analyst, ran my hunt scenario. I want to escalate this to my SOC manager. He's been off all weekend, just got back in the office. I can forward him the dashboard I saw it from, say, hey, here's where this originated from. This was the alert. I then pivoted over to the investigation. Me, Billy Bob, Sean, and Cooch, we ran this down all the way to this AD server or what have you. I can then share this with him as well, and he'll be able to track all of that movement. And then, of course, you have PDF reporting, et cetera, if he needs to print it out, which hopefully he doesn't have to do at home anymore, right?
Yeah. And the real key to it, I would say, is to make sure that you are filling in those fields, within our system, because you want to keep historical knowledge of that. I think that's one of the big problems that a lot of organizations have is, as they're sending out alerts, as they're doing these investigations, they're not consuming their own reporting, if you will. They'll break out to, a Word editor, and they'll, type it all up there and they'll send it out. And there's no knowledge of that apart from maybe a SharePoint, storage area or something like that. And so if you do it all within the system here, it retains that knowledge. So it shows up in the timeline. If you do see this 6 months, 12 months from now, you'll be able to track back and say, oh, we had an issue about this, 12 months ago. Why did that not take effect? Did the indicators change? Did they use a different tactic, attack vector to get into us? What went wrong that allowed us to be susceptible to this attack?
Really cool. And then, so I think kind of following off, I did hear ticketing systems. One of the questions from Sec IT Guy, do you guys have the bidirectional API tie-ins with Salesforce, Jira, Zendesk, et cetera?
I believe we do have a Jira integration. I don't think we have Zendesk or the other one.
Salesforce.
Sorry.
Salesforce.
We've got RTIR, Salesforce. For me, we're typically just waiting for the request to come in. So if you do have a need for a Salesforce integration, our teams work very quickly. And I'm sure a bunch of engineers are on the line like I'm minimalizing the amount of work that they do. They work very hard, but they're great at it, and they whip up integrations very quickly.
And I agree. I see a much better use case for Jira than for Salesforce, though. So I'll give that one to you guys. Jira, I could very much see, hey, taking this out, creating a ticket, tracking the ticket through a certain ticketing board. So very cool.
And it is key. We do our best to do bidirectional integrations with all of those, so that, if I'm in a case management system, Jira, or even something like IBM Resilient, those kinds of systems, I can add, if I add in an artifact, an IP address, a domain name, we have it automatically reach out to our system to query it, to say, what do I know about this? Add that information back into the ticket. And vice versa. If we're sitting in ThreatQ and you're adding in information, you want to be able to create tickets Within Resilient and within your case management system, you want to be able to add information in there, but you also want to be able to take maybe comments as part of an investigation or a part of a ticket that's there and bring that into ThreatQ to relate that to other information. So the goal is always to try and get that bidirectional integration working in there properly. Some technologies support it better than others, but we always strive for that kind of ideal situation.
Gotcha. I like it. Now, real quick, I do have to put a pause, but then I got a question for you about remediation, Christian. So I have a feeling this is going to take us to the next step in this demo. But John, real quick, I'm going to throw the question we had originally for the swag bag giveaway into the private chat here. Will you take a look at it and see if we addressed that yet? And if we didn't, yes, would you create a new question for us that we might have to ask?
Nope, we have answered that question.
I thought so, and I'm going to go ahead and we have, and I have it right here. So just wanted to double check, make sure we're good to go. Christian, next question we have is for you. They said, can you integrate with an Active Directory structure for automated remediation as part of the SOAR? Can you single push a button, force a password reset, session token reset, and an antivirus scan if you have the appropriately configured API tie-ins?
Assuming we have the appropriate API tie-ins, yes. What I would say is that that's not typically a function that we're targeting as a platform. We are targeting the threat intel sort of management and the automation of that and the data and the distribution and the usage of it. And so the real sort of like enforcement muscle, we do much better partnering with technologies that do that. We do have operations for further action, remediations, EDR tools, right? Triggering playbooks and other platforms, things like that. These are things that we do today, but if you said, can you do this use case? We could make it work. To be frank with you, I would say that we're not the perfect technology for that.
Well, so pause, because you just said, hey, I integrate with playbooks, and I'm going to be your devil's advocate. You integrate with playbooks. You're integrating with EDR, so you could quarantine a device. Like if I have Carbon Black, I could quarantine from that integration, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely.
So I could quarantine. If I've got a playbook for not just quarantining, running an AV scan and creating a ticket, I could run that playbook. Talk to me about some of those orchestration and playbook integrations you have real quick. So
yeah, absolutely. So we've got apps with like Splunk Phantom. We've got apps with Demisto, whatever they're calling that now.
Cortex XSOAR.
Cortex XSOAR, and several others. And so typically what you'll find is that they will query ThreatQ for a list of most relevant indicators, or maybe to look at most recent events that match a certain schema. And then they'll build those playbooks out to take those enforcement actions in an automated sense, right? So enforcement here, typically it's analyst driven. And again, we can do these in a sort of automated sense, but from if you want that playbook, like that's what you want to see, I would say today for the enforcement, the automated, closing out user accounts and stuff like that. That's not typically where we see ourselves in this space. And Cooch, if you want to also play devil's advocate.
Well, yeah, I would probably say, our approach and where people will see us moving this year, most definitely with automation and things is more around data-driven playbooks. We're moving out of playbooks and orchestration. To me, at least, being old school, it all drives around incident response. And there are definitive kind of playbooks associated with incident response to certain events. I think right now, running playbooks and just running incident response in general can be very cumbersome, because some of these playbooks, they're very complicated and complex as far as their setup and execution with the processes that are there. And so our goal is to really try and simplify a lot of that, but expand the use of orchestration and automation to other functions other than just incident response. Can I actually automate threat hunting to a certain degree? If there are certain tasks and functions that you conduct time and time again when you go into a threat hunting mission, Can I orchestrate and organize data better as I interact with the SIM and SOC analyst? So I'm really trying my best to work with the system and design automation as it applies to other use cases. So yes, if we have the right integration, we probably could pull off those things. But as Christian said, it's not really our goal or our focus right now. You know, our main thing is to try and expand the use of threat intelligence to all the different security teams, to even outside of security. I mean, a lot of times security, I used to call it the world's greatest self-licking ice cream cone because, you know, you're doing security events. Why am I doing security events? Well, for security, so I can protect myself and, you know, be better at it. Whereas, you know, you got to look at security as how you're supporting the business, how you're supporting other organizations that are there. And that's really what we're striving for in the direction that we're heading.
Well, and I love that because it comes back to, and I know another gentleman who's been streaming with me, Brandon Krieger, we've been teaching the CISSP content. You know, we got a couple people who are here today who are going to be getting their CISSP. And every day we bring it back to how does this help support your business? Right. And really, when you're sitting at that executive management level and you're the CISO, by the way, just for your gentlemen's kind of knowledge, we took a poll not too long ago in this setting and said, how many of you could see yourself in that CISO role? And over 70, I think it was like 75% said, yeah, I could see myself in that CISO role. So bringing that in and showing, hey, we're bringing threat intelligence together. We're helping with the incident response side through these playbooks, but then we're also all about helping the other business, the parts of your business. I mean, that's huge. And you bring it all the way around. So well done.
Yeah. I mean, it's a conversation I often have is just around the fact that board of directors of a commercial company, so we'll exclude government and military organizations, but, you know, what do they really care about? What are they looking at? You know, well, it's revenue retention, revenue growth, you know, growth in shareholder value. And so I think it's the job of every security organization, especially at the CISO level, to relate what you're doing in security to that. And to say I blocked 1 billion events last month, does it do that? Not really. You know, how are you communicating what you're doing more effectively? To be able to say, listen, I blocked this ransomware event that was targeting our manufacturing group, which generates 200 million in revenue every year from being offline for 3 weeks. That could probably have a lot more impact than, you know, I just blocked 1 billion things. So,
and now you're talking their language. 100%,
exactly.
100%. So Christian, you mentioned you were ready to talk exports. Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got all this data in one place, and it's very powerful for the IR team and threat hunters and things like that. You saw how you could query other tools. Dissemination is also a big part of managing and making threat intel effective and operationalizing it. And I really wanted to show you guys some of our export capability because it's one of those things where I've had folks on calls where they see that and just go, holy, you know, and it's a business conversation, but sometimes this is a cool capability. And what I wanted to show you is we've got about 30 or 40 different exports that are pre-built, right? And so the platform ships with these exports. And if I click this, you know, API export Splunk, right? It's an endpoint on the back end of my ThreatQ instance. And you're going to see a preview of the type of data that we would send over to our Splunk application. So interesting, cool, you know, but what's really interesting is you can actually duplicate any of these exports and you could modify. You'll notice there's a different API location here for the export. And you could modify what data you're going to publish to that technology. So I could say of my indicators, I could say maybe I only want to do indicator type is IP address, and maybe I'll include MB5s, right? Just to show you we could do multiple things. And then maybe only stuff where the score is greater than 5, right? But when I run this export, you're going to see a result that looks a little bit different. Now, in this case, these are previews. You know, I could remove this 10 here. I could do other fancy stuff. I could do a differential if I want. Now I get nothing, as you might expect. And so this is something that some of our MSS partners, they see this and they realize, that they could control what sort of information that they're going to disseminate to their customer technologies, right? And you saw how quick it was to create a new export that some new SIM instance could reach into and get new indexes of data. They see that we could withhold information based on the source, for example. And now you'll notice this looks a little bit different again because we withheld the source information, right? Very powerful capability that I know folks are tired of figuring out how they're going to export and disseminate their data to their different technologies and teams and tools and things like that.
Well, you're right, but that's 100% customizable, right? And even if you want to send one subset to one and one subset to another, this allows you to do it. So very cool feature ad. Thanks for sharing that, Christian.
So again, I made a reference to the pyramid of pain, excuse me. Indicator type, right? IP address, maybe hashes. What are more relevant to you? What do you consider more sort of powerful or of just greater relevance to your processes? Sources information, right? Did my analyst add this? Did I see this in my internal environment? Is this the commercial feed that is for that I want to get the latest and greatest? Or is it some exchange where it's probably a false positive that may have expired 2 weeks ago? Attributes, we talked about that. That's the winning answer here. You know, what's the category of the intelligence? Is it malware? Is it fraud? What's the vendor? What's the confidence? Again, attributes could be anything. So it's a very, very important capability. An adversary relationship. Okay. Is this thing related to a specific adversary that I believe is targeting my organization? Or one of the options is actually any adversary, right? Mm-hmm. So as soon as I associate an IOC with an adversary group, according to that rule, I could have the score increased or decreased based on that.
Very cool. Awesome. And Cooch criticality, we'll build that in and we'll ship it with any new deployment.
Yeah, let's just do that.
That would scare a lot of people.
I like it. But well, I got to thank you, gentlemen. Once again, you know, you guys brought us a platform. It could be air gapped. It could be in the cloud. It could be hosted on CentOS, and maybe someday here in the near future, something else. It is containerized, but you're helping organizations from start to finish really take that threat intelligence in, correlate it, visualize it, be able to share it and work it throughout an organization. That's really cool. And thank you for showing me your platform for the first time. I appreciate you.
Definitely. Thank you for having us on here, Joel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a blast. I really hope we get to do it again sometime. Once again, thank you guys there in the audience for joining us. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. If there are any questions left over, we will reach out afterwards and get those questions answered. With that, Cooch, Christian, any final thoughts?
No, just thanks. You know, people reach out, let us know, you know, come visit our website, come stalk me on social media that they put, you know, always willing to accept great ideas for what the next great, you know, security idea is.
That's what's up. And it's all about community. So please, once again, Jack, if you could share their social media stuff, follow Cooch, follow Christian. If there are any threat hunting CTFs or something that they're doing, they said they'd post it on social. So keep your ears tuned and your eyes to your LinkedIn profile. So with that, that was Uncover Cyber, our SOAR edition with ThreatQuotient. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And everyone, have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks.